Let's face it, Amazon is big and is now worth over $1.1 trillion. Having a brand value of $350 billion, Amazon is second only to Apple, leaving Google and Microsoft behind. But get this, every quarter of 2021, about 56% of Amazon's revenue came from third-party sellers.
People love to focus on things that aren't yet working. And that's good, it's human nature. That kind of divine discontent can be very helpful. But really, it's incredibly hard to get people to take bold bets.
In the constitutional republic, and we're all kind of curious what happens next in this next chapter. But right now, money has flowed away from certain kinds of institutional capital or deployment, maybe out of real estate and stuff, because it simply doesn't pencil in, and short-term rentals are having more troubles. And certain geopolitical things are forcing mayors and cities and stuff to say, well, we can't allow short-term rentals anymore. So people are wondering, is that an opportunity? But on the e-com side, here's the one thing I do know. It's electronic commerce is just a way to fulfill that transaction.
When you think of voltage, you think of electricity or even getting shocked. I'll bet, however, you never think of Amazon e-commerce or automated income. Yet Voltage Digital Marketing has made it their business to help shock entrepreneurs into big business. Let's face it, Amazon is big and is now worth over $1.1 trillion. Having a brand value of $350 billion, Amazon is second only to Apple, leaving Google and Microsoft behind. They boast over 300 million active users, 197 million visit every single month, and now there's over 157 million subscribers to Amazon Prime in the United States alone. Now, on average, these subscribers spend $1,400 per year and visit Amazon over 2.2 billion times. But get this, every quarter of 2021, about 56% of Amazon's revenue came from third-party sellers. Now, these Amazon sellers earned between $26,000 and $810,000 annually. Its founder, Jeff Bezos, had this to say.
Many kids and many grown-ups do figure out over time what their passions are. And sometimes we let I don't think it's that hard. I think what happens though sometimes is that we let our intellectual selves overrule those passions. And so that's what needs to be guarded against.
My job, one of my jobs as the leader of Amazon, is to encourage people to be bold. And people love to focus on things that aren't yet working. And that's good, it's human nature. That kind of divine discontent can be very helpful. But it's incredibly hard to get people to take bold bets. And you need to encourage that. And if you're gonna take bold bets, they're gonna be experiments. And if they're experiments, you don't know ahead of time whether they're gonna work.
Now, our guest today is Neil Twa. He is the author of Almost Automated Income with FBA and owns the company Voltage DM. He's a strategist that has helped numbers of people take their products, build massive businesses, and create an exit strategy that, well, is generally an entrepreneurial dream. So much so that Kevin Harrington from Shark Tank has endorsed the Voltage methodologies. Now, you may or may not see yourself as an Amazon reseller, but get ready because Neil will no doubt expand your thinking. And the best part is, Neil's a constitutional entrepreneur. Neil, thanks for being on the show today. Really appreciate your time, and we're certainly excited to introduce you to our audience. So again, thanks for being here.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on, Ryan.
Awesome, man. Let's jump right into it. Listen, we talk about the words voltage. What an interesting word in itself when it comes to business and entrepreneurship. But if you would, before we get going on some of the Q&A I'm gonna hit you with, Neil, share with us your background. Where'd you come from, entrepreneurial path? What led you to what you're doing today on such a big scale? But give me that backstory a little bit, and then we'll roll from there.
Yeah, I try not to bore you with the details that only my mom finds interesting, but try to keep it to the applicable nature. Not too long of an answer, but in short story, my dad was a hardworking guy. He was a military guy, skipped out of the last half of his high school. And so he's just a hardworking guy, went and learned how to work with his hands, be a mechanic. And he taught me all the value about being a man, getting under cars, and what it meant to truly have integrity and walk in faith. He was just a strong character in that way. What he didn't know was business. What he didn't know was finance. What he didn't know was developing companies. He was a great employee. So money in our house was a 4-letter word. By the time I was 12, I had to go out and start hustling on some side yard stuff in order to make some money. My first little hustle was mowing the lawn, so I could have some extra cash to pay for the extra gas when I could borrow his car or do things that I wanted to do because I simply didn't ask. You had enough that you needed, but no more. So I learned very quickly the value of working for something and gaining something, and that kind of instilled that value in me. But I honestly wanted to go and be an Air Force pilot. That's what I set out to do. And by the time I got to my last semester in high school, I was going to go apply and go into the Air Force and be a fighter pilot. I had no other plans, didn't apply to college, didn't want to do any of that stuff. And then I got rejected. And I'm like, well, crap. They said I couldn't fit in the cockpit. It wasn't my right thing for me. And so they're like, well, you can fly C-130s. You can be a mechanic. You can do these other things. And I'm like, no, I don't want to do any of that. It's like, I wanted to be a fighter pilot. So now what? So I'm scrambling in the last half of the last semester of high school to figure out what to do with my life. And I started applying for college stuff. It turns out, I'm pretty good at music, or at least I was back in the day. And so I got a almost full ride music scholarship with some work study to a liberal arts college out in Iowa, where I went and played music to become a music major. So in essence, I was going to become a guy living in a van down by the river when it wasn't cool. It's cool now. Like everybody's like, van life, that's so cool. And it's like, no, like 30 years ago, that was not so cool. And so I decided, okay, I need to change this up. The internet literally came online, I would say, and saved my life, because it became a median of communication and technology and all this stuff. And nobody really knew about it. It was new. And we were literally pulling, the basement area of the library out so we could put computer lab in, right? And we're figuring out how to put these machines. And it was just this crazy new time. And academia was not there. So I'm thinking, well, I either get into computer science or I try to figure out what I'm doing. And took one semester of computer science and said, well, screw that. I'm not living behind a green screen the rest of my life. And I said, okay, well, I'm just going to figure this out. And when I got a job. So for the better part of more than 12 years, I just worked in the corporate world because that's where the money was. And I found out very quickly, it's who you know that gets you there and what you know that keeps you. And so I would stay up late learning the things I needed to apply my job the next day so I wouldn't get fired. So I literally learned on the fly how to do that. Now, I had a mentor in my uncle. I actually had 5 uncles. One in particular was actually very good at business. The others had businesses I never recognized until later. They were kind of their own independent, side hustlers. They worked concrete and labor and other jobs. They never really worked for anybody but themselves. And I never really saw it that way, not from my family structure. But my uncle started building and developing boats out of San Diego, and he actually built a business. And as I watched him do that, and he allowed me some time to talk, my mind started to open up to the possibilities of business and alternatives and things that I wanted to do. So I went into that corporate world for just a while listening to him and gleaning information and trying to get time with him when I could. And I actually had some cool things happen in that process. I was one of the first in the teams of Sprint PCS when the first mobile phone launched. So that was fun, which grew a hyper growth situation. I was like the 5,082nd employee pulled in from a contractor who applied to get a full-time position. I got it on the full 6-person team that was running all of Sprint's knowledge systems and websites of 50,000 something pages. And I was thrown into a group of people who were 10 and 15 years my age and said, here, manage these people. I don't know what the heck I was doing. And figured it out in 5 years when that company grew from 5,000 to 80,000 employees and just had this huge growth cycle. I got to watch it. And in the process of continuing who I know and making relationships, IBM came in to help a project and took over that project for a while. And I got to make friends with the IBMers and the Yale graduates and the Stanford people and all these high profile people, and got to make friends with some of them. And they said, hey, there's a job opening. You should come check it out. Well, little did I know, it took me longer to get there than to actually apply. And I was inside of IBM. And so I spent almost 5 years in IBM until 2007. We were doing all kinds of cool technology stuff. I got to work on the Watson Super Blue computer and do some stuff around AI and that kind of thing before it was really AI like we know today, which is just tip of the iceberg. But that was a really great experience. And I kind of came to the culmination of my corporate career. I said, well, I've always wanted to do something. In 2005, my uncle, who was my mentor, passed away. And so I lost kind of my bearings just a little bit. And 2 years later, I realized when this opportunity presented itself, I had to go. Learned to, burn the boats, but not the bridges, if that makes any sense. So I fired the man and I'm out, but I left my connections and contacts, in place, but I burned the boats. In other words, I'm never going back. This is it. I'm going forward, always forward, never going to go back. That led me into a series of opportunities to build my own management consulting. I made IBM a client later on and ran sub projects for them, got to see public and private sector stuff, helped them deliver the 2010 census. And so got to build that up. But I found out I actually was really good at the media side. I was good at the direct response, the direct marketing, the business, the development side. So, well, I got to do more of that because that's a lot more fun than running project teams for subcontractors. So I got into the marketing world and discovered I was really good at it. Actually, I was very good at it. And with that, as anything progresses, I learned to get good at it. And as I progressed through it, I realized I was, making companies a lot more money, but I was just trading more time for money in a different box. So I still hadn't learned to get past certain levels of risk and really challenge myself to become a business owner instead of somebody who was just an entrepreneur. And as I challenged myself to get past that and risk, I hired a mentor, and he taught me the phrase sales fixes everything, and get out there and learn how to sell. Sell ethically, sell morally, sell through attraction. Don't just force sale and make yourself a used car salesman. But I didn't really like the whole aspect of that business development relationship too much. But I did like delivering the product, delivering the outcome. And so I decided to own the products. So started looking at the idea of building private label brands, physical products, private label. I owned the front end of the offer and the marketing and the direct response, knew how to do that really well. I just didn't own the other half of it. So I was like, well, I got to own the whole thing if I'm going to become a business owner. So in that process of literally working the process, it materialized into physical products and private label. And by the time 2014 or so rolled around, I had my first 7-figure brand running. And so I learned a lot in that process about business, money, and finance. During that whole span, I unavoidably, or maybe purposefully, ditched a relationship out of pride and arrogance. That was tough. I blew too much money, made a mistake, and went bankrupt once in that process. But 17 years later, I figured out what I'm doing. I know who I am now. I know the boundaries of money and relationships. I've discovered the school of hard knocks along the way and have led to building continuous private label brands, partnership in brands, exiting and now acquiring brands in the space of e-commerce, and have stayed in that vertical for about 12 years now, which I know very well and which I'm going to stay in for the next 12 years.
Well,
so I found my place finally.
Well, Neil, I love it. Great backstory. That rolls into where I want to go now and talk a little bit about your book that I believe people can grab, and it will save them years of frustration and
maybe a few.
They won't have to go through all of that. Of course, your website, voltagedm.com. I'm going to recommend everybody go to that. You'll see right where it says book. And you'll see the book has been endorsed by Kevin Harrington, Shark Tank Kevin Harrington. So there's some credibility behind it, but it's titled Almost Automated Income with FBA. I like the word almost automated. That's kind of got a cool twist to it. But give us a couple of the highlights of the book. People are going to dig into it. Then I'm going to jump into some specific platform like Amazon type questions. But tell us a little bit about Almost Automated Income with FBA.
Yeah, in clear terms, it defines a strategy that we deploy, which is actually a multi-channel or what's called an omni-channel strategy. Amazon being one place where we incubate brands and capture demand for a brand and then move that brand into multiple channels of opportunity to create what we call a holistic e-commerce brand, not a single channel brand. While we might start on FBA, a lot of people think that's all we do, but we actually go into other channels, shops, and mechanisms to expand the brand out. The strategy laid out in the book is actually 15 other experts that I brought on my podcast for the intent of the book. These were experts in the area of finance and business strategy, deploying assets, mindset, overcoming objections with business, and copywriting, and all the things that were necessary. Individual experts that actually align with similar beliefs of mine, as well as applicable beliefs to our business and the platform we run on for e-commerce, and specifically focused on how to look and create, capture that demand strategy. So really, it is a book of 17 years of knowledge combined with 15 other chapters, 15 other experts, and their knowledge in my process is kind of aligning with how you build the 5 steps of an e-commerce company, starting with a single channel focus. And it gives resources and insights that align with that. Kevin has been around me since about 2016-ish or so. Done some deals with him together. He's been a great sounding board. He's been a great relationship. I had the honor of him, endorsing the book as well as writing the foreword, which was awesome. We jokingly say we're the only as seen on TV Amazon, based consultancy. So call that what you want. But in the end, he's helped me really open and expand my mind to what does it mean to do 5-6 billion or more in sales? He really challenged my belief structure and opened it up another level wider so that I would see where certain risks at certain levels are and understanding what one man's 5,000 is another man's 5 million. It's numbers and game and different levels of risk. And there's abundance and all of that. And we just kind of piled that into the book and really gave it an opportunity to give a voice to multiple people who are vertical experts in their field, which is not me. right? I have vertical experts in certain, things, and myself, I'm an expert in certain things, but I am also not an island unto myself, which is one of the major things I've learned in life. And I still see too many people trying to do it all themselves and realizing that they're, losing opportunity and not really seeing the abundance. And I hope that by reading the book, they can grasp that.
So I love it. I mean, so let's kind of paint this picture here, because we're speaking. We're on a show called The Constitutional Entrepreneur, which I've had conversations with you about those constitutional principles our country was founded on, about entrepreneurship, where we're going, what we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So people are watching this. People have ideas. Many listening already have a product line, already have things that they would like to scale. They would like to figure out how to create more volume. And from what I'm gathering, your expertise is certainly, you've utilized the backbone of Amazon to take these principles and correct me if I'm wrong here, but you're helping people scale businesses. That's what you do. You've not just done it once.
It really is what we focus on.
You've not just done it once or twice. You've done it a bunch of times. You've taken these 5 principles or these 5 key ideas that are outlined in the book, and you really partner. I don't want to loosely use the word partner, but you roll up your sleeves. You get in with the people that you work with, help them take their business to another level. If someone's watching today saying, "Okay, did I miss the boat with Amazon? I've got products. I'm trying to move them. I've got ideas. I've even got funding if I want to go do this idea, but I need somebody to help me figure out the path." You're obviously succeeding in Amazon, but I think people say, "Man, Amazon, that's I don't know that that's the right path." Give me your perspective on where Amazon's going, what it is as an opportunity for a new person today.
Is it too late to get an Amazon and make it successful in 2024 and beyond? I'm not sure when this is coming out, but right now it's September 2024. And if I'm looking forward to the fourth quarter and to the next year and saying, where are new opportunities lie for those who are getting involved, and where could people expand, and where should people look at volume opportunities for maybe exit or acquisition? So if I'm paraphrasing that correctly, what you're asking, there's always an opportunity. The opportunity always shifts. Money flows like a river. Okay. It's always moving. Sometimes it moves farther away from certain areas and it moves over to other areas. And sometimes we think there's not enough for us because it's scarce or it feels like it's not close. But in actuality, it's just flowing some other direction. It is moved around. We haven't moved with it. We didn't follow it. It just shifted. Right now, we watch this movie playing out in the Constitutional Republic, and we're all kind of curious what happens next in this next chapter. But right now, money has flowed away from certain kinds of institutional capital or deployment, maybe out of real estate and stuff, because it simply doesn't pencil in, and short-term rentals are having more troubles. And, certain geopolitical things are forcing, mayors and cities and stuff to say, well, we can't allow short-term rentals anymore. So people are wondering, is that an opportunity? But on the e-com side, here's the one thing I do know. Outside of prostitution, it's the oldest barter and trade system in the world. It's electronic commerce is just a way to fulfill that transaction. It's just a digital transaction. You and I could meet in a parking lot of Walmart and fulfill a transaction with a product on the Facebook side, if in Marketplace or whatever. But the end result is it's just a transactional based mechanism we're using now. So if we don't focus on that, what is the actual answer? It is down to understanding who your audience is, who your avatar is, and understanding what the heck do I actually sell to them. If we determine who that is and we understand what it is, and we're willing to look at the market and let the market tell us what it wants, and we are able to give the market and willing to give the market and willing to risk in this capitalistic system an opportunity, there's a reward on the other side of that. Of course, you might fail somewhere through the process of figuring it out, but the reward is still there if you go after it. So the opportunity is there, always will be there. It just shifts and it flows. In certain kinds of product types and certain price points, it's no longer flowing in the same way that it was earlier. Amazon's own Prime Day, just for numbers, is now showing the average value of a checkout cart was $60. So that's actually up. And I know some people doesn't make sense to some people because money seems like it's farther away now and people are spending less of it. But in actuality, the cost and the value of the product and the perception of the buyers has changed. So they've actually spent more for certain products. Well, Neil, that's called inflation. Don't you understand inflation? Well, it's not exactly inflation, it's demand. Supply and demand side elasticity, right? So at this point, we're seeing the value of supply and demand meeting customer expectations, but changing and shifting like a river. It's moving into what we call tier 2, tier 3 buyers. Those are buyers who are more willing to look at the product and value, not just its commodity based, not just what someone else thinks of it, but what they feel the outcome and value of that is. You get that right, and people will demand the product from you faster than you can provide it, right? Which is the hope of all business owners. But in actuality, if we're putting our principles against it, if we're looking at it through the level of our risk, if we're not considering the possibilities of rewards and we're operating in scarcity, we're simply not going to see that. That's what a limiting belief does. I look at it and say, there is a new opportunity. There's a price point opportunity. We sell $50 to $200 in retail price point for our products. Our averages are between $100 and $180. Okay, so for that reason, we're touching a different avatar, a different audience, and they have a different driven mechanism for the purchasing behavior they have there. And those numbers are actually going up. When they go up, and we don't run it by gut feel, we go by the numbers, okay? Then we know there's profitability. We can pay what the market needs. We can move through inflation, okay, because we control the price of the product. We can move with the marketplace because we have that control. And that simply creates opportunity, right? And then with that opportunity, of course, is going by the numbers. Make sure you know that it is going to be profitable for every unit sold that becomes a portfolio, that becomes a business. So if people are feeling like they can't sell their products, they may not be as in demand. They're simply trying to force a product on the market. We're not Elon Musk. Okay. Our goal is to look at the market, read the market, and simply ask the market, do you like this one? If not, do you like that one? Or maybe you like this one. And then we are staying in a vertical, combination here of product opportunities. And then when the market says, hey, it's that one, we want that one 100 or 1,000 times a day, I'm going to sell it to you. And that means I might be selling something I never thought was possible. I may sell fuzzy bunny slippers to grandma because she loves them and she's willing to pay the price point and tell everybody in her nursing home how much she loves them. And that's where capitalism plays a fun role in this, in my mind anyways, because if I can meet the market's demand and I don't impose my limitations on it, I follow the market into its opportunity. If I do that correctly, growth and scale can come from that, but it comes from running with profitability first. Profit is not always greed, just so we're very clear, but it does pay for you and it does pay for the business and it does allow you to acquire customers. So if you're in that middle rung, and here's the simple thing, it's hard for a lot of businesses to understand. If you're not willing to acquire that customer for what it costs to acquire them, and I'm willing to do it, you're going to lose. Okay? Because I know something you're not doing. And that is that if they're acquired into me and I can then sell them additional products in my brand, additional services, I can sell them more in a longer period of time, in this case, 12, 24 months, I'm going to win. I'm playing a longer game than you. So if you're not able to do that or willing to do that or adjust your products and price points to meet the market demand, you're never going to see growth and scale out of it, right? And we always have to be in an iterative cycle of creating growth and scale through being direct response marketers, understanding the market, understanding who we sell to, and answering the questions in their mind until they can't, it's a fever pitch of emotion that they have to get it from us. And then we've got to provide it to them. That's where scale comes from. People think it comes from too many movies, like the movie where, if you build it, they will come, right? It's the old Iowa Dream and Kevin Costner, right? This is not how products work. That's how you think they work. And having been through Shark Tank thing and watching that from the other side of the fence, not being on the show and seeing how that actually plays out, people are getting caught in that script, right? The idea that I have to invent something unique and holistic or the market won't demand it from me for millions of years. And that's actually not true. So we don't innovate, we invent. Excuse me, flip that, reverse it, pull a Willy Wonka. We innovate, not invent. Now, I've been an inventor and I ran through that costly time frame. And there's a lot of time in market and you sit down and you think and you make all these ideas and plans and you spend hundreds of thousands of dollars or more to get it to market in the hope that you nailed it all correctly and you'll sell millions of dollars. That happens less than 1% of the time for people, okay? Most of us are not Elon Musk. So you've got to look at how you change and innovate opportunities to meet the market demand, ride those trends, look at that opportunity. How can I change my product valuation and narrative just a little bit to make that occur, right?
Do me a favor we'll take everything you just said. You obviously are very knowledgeable about the path that you take and the strategies you take. And you've opened this up to where entrepreneurs come to work with you. You've worked with a lot of entrepreneurs through the years, a lot of business people, a lot of people that are excited about building a business. They come to you. I'd like to know the top one or two distinctions that you've now come across since you have worked with so many people that maybe determined what are some of these distinctions that determined either they've had success growing their business with you or they haven't. And certainly, I think fear holds a lot of people back from taking the step. There may be people watching this today that say, you know what, I'm ready to do this. They just can't seem to pull the trigger. And it's fear of the unknowns. And the more we can eliminate those unknowns for them, the better off they are. So tell us, what are one or two of your top distinctions when you look through the portfolio of successful people versus ones that just had challenges, they couldn't get it off the ground? What are the distinctions that you look at and say, okay, this is what helped the most people get through to the other side?
As you said, not everybody is successful in business.
Yeah.
So even if I bring, and as a saying from the country goes, I lead a horse to water, I can't make it drink. So while I can give many people the same process, not all of them are going to follow the process to success, because sometimes they're not always ready. I do my best upfront to guide and qualify. I invite only those who I believe will fit into this. And I actually ask each of them for a DISC profile. And in a DISC profile, I'm looking for, who they are in dominance, how are they influencing, how they're steady in the work or processes or businesses or just their W-2 or other things they've done in the past, and how conscientious are they for details and following a path forward to success. If they have never had any successes or cannot tell me about any major failures, that's usually a risk for me. I look at that from a SWOT analysis, right? That's typically a risk greater than I want them to fail on their time on my dime, and I want them to go out and do this correctly. So I want to make sure that if they're going to employ the time, energy, attention, and money, the team effort into doing this together, and what we call a partnership, but it's a done with you. They own 100% of the company. I won't partner with anybody until they've proven they can be a CEO operator. And then we have opportunities to do actual partnerships with them later on inside of what we do, just to be clear. But I don't start there with people, right? Because I've got to walk with them. They always think that it's a risk from us, being the ones who are going to jack them or whatever, but it's actually usually the other way around. I have to be confident if I bring them in, and because we're an incubator of products and ideas and people, I want to make sure they're going to go the mile. I want to make sure they know that there's 3 to 5 years. I want to make sure they know they have certain levels of risk they're willing to do. Showing them the product, showing them how to manage the product, build the product, and create the market for the product, or grab that demand that's on Amazon, is actually not hard for us to do. What's hard for us to do is to get the right person who understands enough risk in their life, like Daniel did, to understand what it takes to risk the capital necessary to grow to the next level, because the opportunity is there, but many times it's been choked by people who simply couldn't meet the demand of the market. So they got into the market, they got started. Their failure was the disbelief that it would actually work. So they were not ready to capitalize it at the risk level it required to go to the next level. The business said, you need X amount of capital. And they thought, I don't have it, or I can't get it, or I didn't actually think it was going to happen. So I put that capital over here. I didn't have it actually because I wasn't 100% sure it was going to run to that level. And once it did, they can't capitalize it. And so the business loses, right? When the market says demand, when the products say go, when you got to order a 40-foot container and it costs 75 grand or whatever it costs to do that, you've got to go with the business. It's a wave of opportunity. And if you miss that wave, you're going to fail. So people fail to start, because that's just probably the worst failure in the world. And then they fail to capitalize the business correctly when it actually starts to work. And then there are other levels of risk to capitalize a business over the next 12, 48, 60 months that are going to be required to keep that business pushing forward. By the time businesses get to 3 to 5 years out, that's when actually 80% of them crash and burn. That's statistical. You can go check that out. Why? Because the next level of that capitalization requirement to go from, say, that 7-figure to 8-figure or 9-figure business in 3, 5, 6 years is the next major amount of capital it requires to get it to go. You got to put the 500,000 in, or the million or more it's taking you in that 4 years for it to return the kind of results that you could see like Daniel did, right? Daniel was willing to take that risk, grow through that risk, ride the business, capitalize the business based on its demand when others would not do that. He would do that. He had a fortitude and a risk level that was greater. And because of that, he'll turn $16 million a year over in business on Amazon channel only this year in his business. Okay, 4 years into it. So he was willing to do that kind of risk. Others have been willing to take greater risks. Matt Harward took $1 million risk in year 1, but turned over a $40 million a year business in year 2.
Wow.
So his level of risk allowed him to go faster and bigger. He was willing to capitalize risk. So the end of if I go with David, if I tell you about Adam, if I keep going down the line, I tell you about Katie and Eva. And so they were willing to risk things that others were not willing to risk, not because I told them not to, or not because we were in their way from getting it done. They just simply couldn't take that next step. And so they capitulated the business.
Yep.
They caused it to stagnate. And they can't, then they lost the opportunity because that was their wave to ride. Could they hit it again? Absolutely. But, that doesn't always mean everybody has the capability. So their patterns typically are people who understand daily, weekly, monthly success. They typically come to us because they're looking for the strategy and they want us to help them implement the steps correctly so they can build the processes into what they know because that's who they are. They're stable. They're conscientious. When they see something and they follow a first person down the road, they're going to go right behind them. And if they can repeat the process and do it on their own, they will quickly start to own it and then start doing it on their own.
Mm-hmm.
That moves us out of, say, coaching and advisory and puts us more into the mentoring side.
Yep.
How do we connect and network and build up the next levels of capability and help push them through the next level of risk? That's where real growth and scale comes from. That's why it's not for everybody. That's why I always evaluate people to ensure what is their real level of risk, because I know how fast this can go. I know what can happen when it goes the right direction. It's their opportunity to gain or lose it at that point.
Yep. Neil, thanks so much for being on the show. Listen, everybody, if you're wanting to launch, grow, profit, scale businesses, like at a whole different level, I'm going to recommend you go to voltagedm.com, grab a copy of the book. And Neil, if you would, as far as people connecting with you,
Sure.
You being able to offer them any advice whatsoever, how do you recommend the best way for them to connect with you if they need to?
If they go to Voltage DM, check out the book. There's a free presentation with myself and Kevin that goes over how we do the business model from growth all the way to exit, because we are, as an incubator, growing, building, exiting, and acquiring client accounts that meet certain objectives and goals. So we don't not only start the business, we are part of the exit. So if they are interested in that, check out that information. My contact information is on there. And of course, I'm across every social media as well. And there's information inside the book on how to reach me and my team if you feel like it's a conversation you want to have.
Neil, thanks so much for being on the show, bud.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.